Yes, yes.
All right. How's it going, everybody? It's Raph from B&C Camera. I have the awesome pleasure to have Henry Presha, correct?
Appreciate.
Presha.
Appreciate.
Here, I was going to say Presha, but Presha is
Close
the proper.
enough.
Yeah, close. Yeah. Just wanted to talk to you a little bit today about your gallery that's opened up. It's running from, I believe, what is it? We are in April, from mid-April to mid-May,
Yes,
correct?
correct.
Awesome, cool. So let's go ahead and talk a little bit about yourself. How did you get started with photography?
Well, it was quite easy for me actually. I was really curious about it. I have an uncle and a dad. My dad, who they dabbled in photography.
Yeah.
And as a kid, I always followed them around, trying to learn. But ultimately, I had to learn it on my own.
Right.
So while they were at work or whatever, I would sneak their cameras out backyard and,
Yep.
shoot, trees and, the backyard and family events and things like that. And it just continued to evolve from there.
Okay, right on. Where was that? Where did that humble beginning start at? Was it here in Vegas or?
I was born and raised in Bradenton, Florida.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yes, on the Gulf Coast side of the state, which is really awesome. So our summers were really wonderful at the beach.
Oh, yeah.
So
I can
it was,
imagine.
so I constantly took a camera with me everywhere I went. So,
Okay.
and I just immersed myself into it.
Right on. So you carried this on since you were younger. So this progressed from high school, I'm assuming, and then on through your adulthood, or?
Absolutely. Once I picked up the camera, I never put it down.
Okay, cool.
Essentially.
Yeah.
Of course, I hate to give away my age.
No,
When I started, it was 35 millimeter film.
right.
As a kid, I didn't have a job. I got my allowance, and I would use my allowance to get my film developed at like a drugstore, like Eckert's or
Yeah,
whatnot.
back when everything was available back in the day.
Exactly.
Yep.
So I think in that respect, that really made me really get into the detail of film photography, because that is very, very a humbling experience when you shoot and you send the film off and 3 weeks later it comes back and you're nervous because you don't know what you have or if you even have the shot, and you can't duplicate the shot, especially in nature. So it really made me learn things quickly.
Yeah. It's funny because whenever I talk to people in the store and just in general about photography and film, shooting film photography for me is like asking a girl out on a date, and you're like, before you prep, you're just like, oh, I don't know if it's gonna end up well, blah, blah, blah.
Correct.
And then, when you send it out to get developed, that's more anxiety. You're just like, oh, I hope I got the shot that I wanted.
Yes.
And then when the execution and you actually, ask or, you get that film back, it's so relieving to get that answer.
Yes.
Whether it's a yes or like, hey, nailed it on the spot, or,
Correct.
Oh no, I moved my camera a little bit and it caused it to kind of have a blur because you were doing a long exposure.
Correct.
You learn from that,
You learn quickly when you're a teenager with no job.
Exactly. Yeah. But I was in the same boat too. I mean, for me growing up here, I had a flip phone. That's kind of showing my age. I was shooting on a flip phone. But even before then, when I was a kid, I would remember my aunt's Polaroid camera, and I would be playing around with that, or disposable cameras. So I've been, it's very subconscious, but I've been steeped into this craft and into this field, and I'm sure you feel the same way. So,
Oh, yes.
But yeah, that's kind of how I perceive film photography in general. So
Yeah. Absolutely.
But,
I still to this day I shoot film.
yeah, awesome.
I have a 617 Fuji camera that I
Nice.
take with me.
Awesome.
That is probably my second best camera, if not the first best camera.
Yeah.
The detail, the quality you get from that, it's just incredible. Anytime anyone asks me about shooting, learning photography, the first thing I ask them is, do you know how to shoot film? Yeah. Even if I teach, I'm like, do you know how to shoot film?
Yeah.
Because that's where you're really going to get into, you're going to be real particular about how all your settings, of course.
Of course, yeah.
Your framing. And as you mentioned earlier, you don't know what you get until you get back. So it
yep.
makes you, it slows you down and makes you think about every little detail or aspect of shooting film,
Yes.
which carries on, of course, to digital, except for with digital, you know, we can always erase and repeat.
Yeah, I think with the mirrorless, I mean, not to knock on mirrorless, but like they're a little bit more pampered now, right? with the live preview settings, which is fine. You know, I teach the classes and I show, you know, the students with their mirrorless systems in real time. I still explain the process, but for me, I started in high school with film a little bit, so I kind of got into that more, and I understood that. But I actually started with a DSLR in the military, and I traveled around with that as well. And you know, it was a lot of trial and error. So, and I think, and I'm sure you're probably when you said that statement about like, have you shot film? It's really important to understand that because again, you need to know your settings, what your shutter speed does, what your aperture does, what your even what ISO does in the digital realm. So
absolutely, it makes you learn your camera. Like I said, it slows you down and makes you just really, really think. Back when I was shooting as a kid, you know, it was a pencil and paper to write down all my settings per frame. As I got older, I got a light meter. And with the light meter, you still have to do your math.
Of course, the ratios and just trying to figure out the best proper exposure for things. So
yes, absolutely.
With your gallery here, your amazing gallery, can you
you.
explain a little bit about all the shots that you've taken? Again, it's going to be open from middle of April to the middle of May. So if you guys want to check it out, definitely swing on in. If not, I'll have the awesome footage here to showcase to you guys some of Henry's awesome work. But yeah, let's go ahead and talk a little bit about the work. And
absolutely.
Yeah, you know, going from left to right here.
Where you want to start?
I mean, I guess, well, we could just kind of talk in general, the process.
Okay.
I wanted to talk a little bit, actually more about the process. Every time you step out to do a lot of landscape photography, like that one of Red Rock right there, that one's a beautiful shot.
Yes.
So what, is there any prep? Do you kind of just go out on an adventure and be like, hey, I'm going to go out and grab some dope shots, or?
Well, that one, that all started as a challenge, to be honest with you. I have a lot of photography friends who live in the Vegas area, and I tell them I go out to Red Rock, I hike around, sort of scouting. That's mainly what I do on any trip before I, you know, go out shooting. And I had mentioned I was at Red Rock a lot, and they were like, "Oh, there's really nothing to shoot at Red Rock. It was hard to shoot at Red Rock." So over the years, since being here, I've learned the weather pattern here in Las Vegas, and that's key to any photography.
Of course.
What time of year, time of the day, or whatever the case may be. So this particular shot of Red Rock was during the monsoon season.
So
correct.
You got all the
clouds because between early spring showers, you'll get a lot of weather. And then after that, it kind of settles down. It gets hot, of course, but then comes the monsoon season and fall into August. And again, you will get that effect. So living in the area, usually when I'm not at home processing or editing anything, I usually just go out to Red Rock, take my laptop. I'll sit there and I'll edit. But I bring my gear.
Yeah, on the go, huh?
Correct. So I'll bring my gear just in case. And after, I don't know, a half dozen times of going every weekend, this shot was finally captured.
Yeah, it's a really amazing shot. You can see the details in the reds of the rocks, of course, and the clouds. It's just like the lavenderness of it. This was taken at what, sunset or sunrise?
Sunset. It was taken at sunset, and a question I usually get about is how do you get the colors? How do you get the shadows?
Of course.
It's simply waiting. I'll be honest with you. That is probably the best advice I can give anybody, is to wait for that moment. And you'll know it when you see it.
It's a gut feeling.
It is. It's truly a gut feeling. You know, you can, if you, for instance, on my phone, I have several weather apps, and on my laptop, I have radar maps on my weather maps on my laptop. So I follow the weather as well.
Perfect.
Absolutely.
So that kind of gives you a slight advantage for sure. But ultimately enough, you know, and I feel that way as a street photographer. You know, that's kind of what I started in. What I love and what I'm passionate about is just finding that right moment and just capturing just like that. So,
you know it when you see it.
Exactly.
Or you can actually see it unfold in front of you. You just got to be there and be ready. That's why a lot of times when I'm out, I take my gear. You just never know.
It's kind of like the way I always perceive it is just like photographers have a certain attunement with everything in the universe and the world, I guess. And like, you gotta, again, just kind of trust your gut and your instinct and just snap the photo when it's happening right then and there.
It's also, you have to have a vision.
Yeah, of course.
Because probably one of the top 3 questions I get is, how did you take that? How did you see that? And I try to tell them that as a photographer, if you're really into your craft, you see things others just don't.
Right, yeah.
Some may call it a good eye, or whatever the case may be, but I can walk through the desert and I guarantee you I'll come back with, for instance, the black and white behind you there. You know, it was one of those shots there where I was waiting for something to develop. I was in the Grand Canyon, and I just happened to see that particular brush there, and my mind automatically said black and white. And the question I get about that one a lot is, what were you trying to focus on?
What is that?
I said absolutely nothing. I wasn't trying to focus, and you couldn't focus on anything. It's actually a little eucalypt plant about that big. And if you try to manual focus, let's say the foreground of it, that everything in the background is going to be blurry. So you had to find a medium in between that. But I knew in the black and white, the abstract of it was just going to be just gorgeous, just gorgeous.
Yeah, and I'm looking at it right now, and it's just like, you know, when I first saw it in the gallery, this, you know, out of everything, a lot of this stuff was great, but I was drawn to that one in particular because of just how abstract it was.
Yes.
You know, stuff like that to me really makes my brain kind of work a little bit more.
Absolutely.
And you know, everybody's thought process and brains work differently, but to me, trying to figure out the guesswork, and that's like whenever you go to any gallery, right? When any exhibit or installation, it's just like what was the artist trying to capture?
Trying to tell you, capture and actually tell you about the shot itself. And that's one of the things I tell anyone is, you want to tell a story.
Of course.
You want your viewer to feel like they are there. And one of the things one of my buyers said about me was, you know, you seem to really capture, it's either a lot of texture or a lot of emotion. And he said that is what really draws him in to my photography.
Awesome. That brings up 2 good segue questions. Emotion, photography. How? I'm sure that's tied a lot to emotion, but what is your thought process? You know, looking at, you know, all the even landscape stuff, you can convey a specific feeling or emotion. What goes in your mind during that process, and how to capture and have a certain feeling to it?
When I see a shot developing in front of me, to make me want to go and I gotta get it, I gotta have it.
Right.
That motion that it invoked me into, I gotta get this shot, I see it. It's the same way I want my viewers and my collectors to feel every time they take a look at one of my shots. As example as with the opening we recently had, there were a lot of guests that were intrigued. They were excited. Some actually had to sit down and just kind of gather themselves. And I had to come over and say, "Are you all right?" You know, they were just so enthralled in it. I think one of the biggest things that kind of captured the imagination was that I shoot large or medium format. So a lot of these shots are made to be printed big because I just feel like going big is very bold. It warrants your attention. It just kind of calls you into it, and that's the feeling that I want to invoke in any of my collectors, any of my viewers.
In the work,
Yes, absolutely.
Awesome, cool. So the second question as well too, since you know you take a lot of amazing landscape photography stuff. We were talking a little bit beforehand. You brought it up a little bit about equipment. For any potential landscape photographers and aspiring photographers out there, could you explain a little bit in terms of, you know, we've talked about the creative side. Let's talk about the technical side. What do you typically bring out to the field? I'm sure ND filters maybe, or a variable ND. Do you bring any of that stuff?
That's probably the second most question I ever get is, do you use filters? And my answer to that is, when I started getting into using filters, they were great. They served their purpose. Comes Photoshop comes Lightroom. Now there's digital editing,
Right.
which you can do post-op.
Of course.
The biggest thing you have to do is prep in field. If you can take care of most of the work, such as exposure
Yep.
and lighting, in the field, the less you have to do in Lightroom or Photoshop and post-op editing, period.
Of course.
So I have tons of filters. I do not use them.
Yeah. You've kind of evolved from that point pretty much, right? Or
Correct. I've evolved from that point, but they were just so expensive. I just don't want to get rid of
no,
them.
absolutely, yeah.
But it's a good starting point for anyone, whether you're a beginner or you're professional. Filters are great.
Okay, cool.
Filters are great.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
awesome. So, yeah, I'm sure it's good to kind of have at the start. I mean, I'm sure it's really useful to have for specific occasions if you're cutting the edge off of something or trying to really dial in your settings to kind of capture like maybe like a long exposure or something like that. I'm sure that's when it kind of comes into play, yeah?
Even with all my long exposures, such as my waterfalls, like the one on the end here.
Yeah.
No
that's
filter.
good. Oh, really?
No
wow.
filter. No
So
filter.
Just long exposure, just
Just
kinda
long
propped
exposure.
on a tripod.
I started tinkering with ideas, techniques.
Okay.
And the best way I've learned was to mimic what I saw. Either it was in nature or other film or pictures that I've seen, and I would try to mimic that without any fancy gadgets other than just a camera. And along the way, I've developed a technique on my own that I think fits me much better.
Okay.
I've been out on tours. I've been out with other professional photographers, and like anything else I've learned in life, you kind of like this technique from this person, that technique from that person, and you kind of merge them together and create your own.
Yes.
Hate to say it, with the advent of digital photography now, it's too easy for everybody to look the same. You can actually copy anyone's work.
That is true, yeah.
You can.
Absolutely.
So then, to make you stand out as an artist, develop your own technique, your own look, your own style, to set yourself apart, basically.
Yeah.
And in doing so, you learn tons of different techniques, ways to use the camera.
Right.
I have a lot of, I hate to say amateurs, but a lot of people who are not really well versed on cameras yet, but they want to get into photography.
Of course, yeah.
And I tell them, sometimes they know the basics. They know, your triangle of focus and aperture and shutter speed and things like that. And I try to give them a challenge.
Right.
I said, I want you to do a certain technique, but I don't want you to do it this way because I know you know it that way.
Yeah.
But now I need you to tell the camera what you want to do versus you letting the camera dictate what it wants you to do for it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So, do you teach, or sounds like a great teacher as well. I mean, I'm gonna have to probably take that from your playbook because I teach here as well. But no, that's a great way to kind of really challenge people. And when I was going through high school, that was the same thing my teacher had taught me. And she told me to kind of think outside the box and really understand what your shutter speed does in relevance to your photo, what your aperture does, opening it and closing it.
Correct.
So yeah, no, that's a really great thing to do. Always, definitely challenge yourself if you're doing photography stuff, so that way you learn those other things.
You will, like any profession, you never stop learning.
Of course.
The day you say you know everything is the day you don't know anything. So from the time I've learned or started, I've never stopped. I kind of seek out challenges, new techniques, new ways to use the same lens I've used for 10 years, and I always get the question of how did you do it, and it's not as easy to explain to someone because they're kind of stuck in well, I know what this does or this technique is, but how did you do this? And I have to, it's a long process to sit there and tell someone, well, here's what
it's
you
a
gotta
lot, yeah.
do.
I mean, it's like you can write a whole textbook pretty much with the process, not just creatively, but technically, of course. There's a lot to it for sure.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I mean, we have your gallery here. Is there any other fun and exciting things ahead for Henry? Jay?
Well, right now I'm about to hit the road again soon here. I'm probably most likely going to be in Key West somewhere.
Oh, awesome! Yeah, it's nice
Key
just
West
hanging
somewhere.
out,
Yeah,
catching
just
the
hanging
cool
out.
summer ocean breeze.
Absolutely.
I love the
Absolutely.
ocean. I'm an ocean guy as well.
You
so,
are, you're as
yeah.
well. I love it. I absolutely love it. I've got some trips to Japan that'll be
Cool.
setting up really soon, and most likely South America at some point.
Where at in Japan and South America?
Can't tell you that yet.
Oh, okay. Right on. It's all good.
So, well, South America, you know, you have your Argentina, you have your Chile, you have Patagonia.
Yeah.
So I'll be concentrating on those areas for a while.
Ooh, that's gonna be fun. Yeah.
Absolutely. I've always wanted to get down there and, you know, probably down there for about a month or so and just, you know, just take some great photos if I can.
Enjoy the like.
Just enjoy it.
Yeah, enjoy,
exactly.
right.
And that's the one thing that I always tell people, because it's when I meet someone, they're like, "Why don't you sell your photos?" I do. Well, your prices are not on your website, or I don't know how to contact you. Well, just go to my website. Why don't you advertise more? I said, you know, this started out as a hobby for me, and it became a serious hobby. I will not let commerce get in the way of my photography, because this is my outlet. This is what I do. I love it.
Yeah.
I built up a serious, I hate to say fan base, but collector's base, if you will.
Of course.
So I am doing pretty good as far as pretty well as far as being able to sell volumes or a lot of units, which is fun, and I really appreciate it. And those who collect my art, they're really happy, and I've got repeat customers. But I think they see what I see in my work is I enjoy it.
Right.
And when you enjoy something, of course it's not work.
Yeah.
And you're having fun, and if you can make money from it, all the better.
Yeah.
All the better.
Right. So yeah, if you're doing what you love, you're not working a single day of your life.
You're
much.
not working a single day.
Yeah.
You know,
that's the dream ultimately, isn't it? Like, you know,
absolutely.
It's, you know,
if it was up to me, I'd stay on the road for the next 10 years.
Yeah, same here. I mean, I've been traveling a lot. I've been back home for a little bit, but you know, I lived in Japan as well. That's why I ask.
Nice.
And
Very
you know,
nice.
I plan on hopefully going back one of these days to do some street stuff out in Tokyo. I was stationed in Okinawa as well, so it's a very tropical island place. There's a lot of beauty to be had there. But yeah, you know, being on the road really opens up your mind and perspective on a lot of things. And hopefully you'll be coming back here to show us some of the stuff that you shot.
Absolutely. I would love to come back and share with you what I've captured throughout the years. Absolutely.
Okay. And then lastly, is there any other things you want to say to any of the aspiring, you know, landscape photographers or any photographers in general within regards to the process and how to not get discouraged or anything like that when it comes to photography?
I would say keep shooting. To those who are coming up, those who are new, who wants to learn the craft, I would say just keep shooting. Go out and practice. It's all about practice.
Right.
All about practice. There's not a single weekend that I do not grab my camera. Even if I go to Red Rock, weekend after weekend, and sit there and process, I happen to get a great capture out of it. But I would say definitely do that, and do not give up. Don't feel discouraged. As far as learning technique, find your favorite artist.
Right.
You know, what I did, you know, was find my favorite artist, or saw some pictures that I saw and try to mimic it. That way, it just made me want to learn even more on how to take a great photo.
Yeah, and basically encapsulate that and kind of, again, incorporate that into yourself and go from there.
Absolutely. After you know, 6 months to a year, to become second nature.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's like riding a bike.
So. Like riding a bike.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, thanks again, Henry, for coming in today.
Thank you.
Taking some time to kind of, you know, sit down and talk a little bit about your work, the process involved, and yeah, hopefully again we'll see you in the near future with some of the newer art that you've got from traveling all over the world.
You sure will.
All
absolutely.
Right. Cool. Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
Thank you.
Cool. That's it.
All right.